So we have a panel coming up here, and really the focus is, as you can see for the theme of today, that idea of future-proofing leadership, and the focus is transformation, resilience, and inclusive growth, and that operative word being inclusive, especially when that's getting dinged these days. It's even more important for all backgrounds and all genders. So we have Zara Shah, who you've had the pleasure of hearing from. She's the board advisor of Nexa Quanta. And then we have Noreen Said, who's the executive counselor of Infotech Research Group. And then we have, excuse me, Donna Mitchell, who you've also had the pleasure of hearing from, CEO and executive educator of Mitchell Universal Network, LLC. And then our lovely moderator, Zainab Juwanji, who's a partner at Insure123 Insurance Agency, Inc. So we'll hand things over to our lovely moderator, and keep your ears open for any nuggets for the panel. And of course, we'll take questions as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rabia, for that introduction. And I think, you did such a fantastic job of setting the stage. So, thank you, Nyla, for putting this together. This is such a cool session because not only do we have this illustrious lineup of speakers, but we've got 3 of them. So going to hear from a lot of gold nuggets from Zara, Noreen, and Donna. You did a great job, Rabia, of introducing them. Zara Shah is, of course, an award-winning responsible AI frontier and tech expert, investor, media commentator, entrepreneur, charity leader. I could go on, but Zara, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. Yes, I have been in this area of responsible AI and frontier technology over a 25-year career. I was at Accenture for over a decade, worked within the capital market sector on AI and powered fintech and tech applications. I then became an entrepreneur. I ran a property portfolio. I then ran a charity in the UK, then co-founded AI-powered RegTech venture, worked with the regulator, privacy regulator as an advisor on the technology board, and now serve on various boards across the public, private, and third sectors. So I would say I have a very holistic view of responsible AI governance, how it applies to large companies, to small businesses, to the third sector, and to the public sector, particularly AI policy in the UK.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Super excited to hear your thoughts on responsible AI. Next, we have Donna Mitchell, CEO of Mitchell Universal Network, an executive educator delivering strategic briefings on digital transformation to Fortune 500 leadership teams, and a very cool podcast host. Donna, would love for you to introduce yourself.
Well, hello, everybody. Once again, I'm Donna Mitchell. Glad to be here. It's an honor to be here, and thank you, everyone. My background spans 40 years. The background includes New York Telephone Company into aviation, after aviation, airline management, and from airline management after being displaced. So I've seen it 360 degrees, leading change and being displaced from change, and then going on into Web3, pivoting to Web3 is the podcast. I'm a member of Forbes Business Council, C-Suite Network, and at this time, I am definitely into everything that's emerging tech. It's very exciting. But those transformations that I've been involved with on the technology side, from electronic ticketing, kiosk, deregulation, divestiture, and everything that took place in regards to healthcare, brings me to this forefront in wanting to see not only myself continue to learn, but everyone continue to learn, modify, adapt, and adjust as we go forward. Thank you.
Yeah, and that experience, I think, is something we're all looking forward to, especially in this age of transformation. And last but certainly not least, Noreen Sayed, who's got such a wealth of 20 plus years of experience of impact across strategic advisory and technology solutions consulting. Noreen leverages her experience as an executive counselor at Infotech Research Group, where she supports C-level executives in everything from identifying opportunities, business challenges, and more. Noreen, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Zainab. Thank you, everyone. And by the way, it's been so insightful so far, so I'm excited to kind of see what's coming. So as Zainab mentioned, Noreen Syed, I have been in the technology industry for about 20 years. I'm a computer engineer at heart, mom and a traveler outside of work. And then within the workforce, it's been digital transformation across public sector in the Canadian government, as well as the commercial enterprises, so financial services, retail, manufacturing, oil and gas, energy, utilities. And it's always been sort of thematic of, their challenges, their transition, their transformation as the technology is advanced and what's the business demanded of them. And so I've kind of been a liaison between those two areas and looking forward to kind of bring that experience out in this call. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. I want to dive right in. Just a little bit about me. My name is Zainab Jawanji. I'm a partner at Insure123, a nationwide insurance brokerage founded in 1985. Partner at our family foundation, Jawanji Foundation. We invest in education in Pakistan. And also I'm from Open Silicon Valley, charter member and incoming board member. So let's dive right in. We've got some fantastic questions. Excited for the audience to hear from our illustrious speakers here. Let's sort of talk about our panel title, future-proofing leadership, right? How does, when a leader today is asked, and we've got a multi-generational workforce, right? We've got boomers and we have Gen Alpha and everything in between. We've got Gen X, we've got millennials. Today, leaders are asked, how do we future-proof ourselves? Organizations are talking about how to future-proof themselves. What does that truly require? What mindsets or behaviors help leaders stay grounded when the pace of change feels relentless? What do you guys do?
Well, I'll go ahead and jump in. I'll go ahead and jump in. At the end of the day, when you're dealing in a company and a culture that has multi-generations, it's important to know that every generation motivates differently. And every generation, you need to sometimes personalize your approach. You may have 500, 1,000, 20,000, 50,000 enterprise and at scale. But those generations are very important to make sure that the culture and the mindset is in place, that they continue to learn, continue to adapt, but everyone must feel comfortable in that space in order to navigate the change, the culture, the transformation, and be successful in balancing the organizational needs and the needs of the organization.
I completely agree with Donna, and the only thing I'd add to that is now that we are now living in the age of AI, the additional thing that everybody needs to do, not just women, is to really take accountability for upskilling themselves in AI and being involved in using it responsibly. By that I mean that when you are using an AI tool at work, whatever tool that is, whether it's Gemini, whether it's the IBM What's the Next platform, whether it's Microsoft Copilot, or it's ChatGPT, whatever tool that you're using, you must be aware that it's not always 100% accurate, and that you use it responsibly by making sure there's always a human in the loop present, and double check your sources, make sure you are using the right kind of prompts, and then keep upskilling yourself. As new technologies coming in, particularly organizations are now using AI agents. They're kind of moving towards agentic AI, and if that happens and you have digital workers, then you have to have additional governance to ensure that those workers are managed just like any other employee.
And with those employees, as she stated, the employees need to feel comfortable that they're not getting replaced, but as you're talking to them about AI responsibly, that it enhances who they are, and not to be afraid of it, but anything that they would question, ask, think, have that conversation with AI. And if it gives you a response that doesn't make sense, or they want to question and follow it up, it's okay. Just treat it like your best friend, or that you're sitting out talking to your best friend, or your husband, your boyfriend, but somebody that you know, and just engage with it. Feel free with it. I think once people understand that it's not something that's going to hurt them, and we take the scary out of it, they'll be able to slowly maneuver and be able to trust it, and then know, like, and trust it, and treat them more than their best friend, because that falls into the ethics side that's going on today. People are getting a little too close to the AI, but anyways, thank you.
Amazing. Yeah, Noreen. The only thing I would add is a little bit of expectation setting, right? If you tell your mind and your teams that you work with that change is a constant, it might seem like a very basic thing, but I think it just gets us out of feeling nervous and anxious about it, but just understanding, okay, well, we're always going to be changing. There's always going to be things coming. It's AI today, tomorrow it could be robotics advancing and further and so on and so forth. And we've already kind of seen that with internet, data centers, smartphones. I often kind of say even the introduction of a car was brand new and it could have been abused and misused. And then there was responsibility and guardrails on what age could you drive at, and what lanes should you drive at, in which direction, and all the rules kind of came into place. So the same is true, I think, in terms of future proofing. The other thing I would say is that if there's one critical skill that you shouldn't really let go of, it's critical thinking. And that's not just taking things at face value, but asking that 5 layers of why. Why is it important? Why does it matter? Who does it matter to, right? Like just those details that comes into play as you interact with the AI, because when you get responses and you ask those critical questions, that's when you'll be able to catch, is it a hallucination? It also keeps you and enforces you to what Zara and Donna referred to on the skilling side, to stay on top of your own knowledge. There's a lot of cursory reading. You never really stop learning. And so that's one other way to kind of future-proof, keep upskilling yourself. Now, that doesn't mean you have to have a server running and always be hands-on labs, but at whatever level you're comfortable with, just challenge yourself and keep learning. I'd say those are a couple of things.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a really good segue into something everyone wants to talk about and hear more about from you guys, which is AI and actually operationalizing AI, right? Whether it's through analytical work, and all three of you touched upon, I think, the big thing we all want to know, like what is the uniquely human edge in leadership when it comes to AI? Noreen, you rightfully talked about critical thinking. Zara, you're talking about, using it responsibly, right? And Donna, you've done a great job of saying it's your friend. Don't be afraid of it. And it's not meant to replace anyone, right? But talk to us more about how leaders can ensure those, uniquely human values in the age of AI, whether it's empathy, ethical judgment, or maintaining human connection when, we're constantly on ChatGPT, asking it to think for us sometimes or analyze stuff for us. But how do we stay human and central in our decision-making strategically in our professional lives? What do you guys think?
I don't mind starting on that. I would say the key thing there is to make sure that we don't let go of, the human element of leadership. What I mean by that is the constant monitoring, the brainstorming, ideation, and at the board level, have understanding of AI governance. Have an understanding that there are some concerns within AI tools related to hallucinations, model drift, especially bias, which relates to gender bias as well. There was a recent report by UNESCO that highlighted the massive gender bias in large language models. And as a result of this gender bias, if it's not correctly governed and mitigated, women will be negatively impacted in areas such as recruitment, healthcare, financial services, and so on. And if it is not governed correctly at the point where, for example, a use case can be that as a company, you have a vacancy and you notice that all the applicants, all the CVs that you've been receiving from your AI tool are all male. So then you would ensure that you put in place a governance tracker that tracks why are you only getting CVs from male candidates. Is it because of the inherent bias in the tool that will ignore female candidates? So you need to kind of be aware of these issues, and then you need to put in place AI governance, and the AI governance will be, I would say, derived from your responsible AI policy. So at the board level, you have your AI strategy, and within a responsible AI strategy and a framework that incorporates, looking at vendors, whether they meet certain criteria. What I mean by that is, does the AI vendor utilize data sets which are representative of the population? Does the data set comply with data privacy regulation? Do they comply with, basic equality, regulation in the US or in other parts of the world? So you'd make sure that the supplier that you select uses ethical design principles. And then at the next stage, you ensure that you put in place a responsible AI policy that looks at making sure that your staff members are trained on how to use that tool properly. And the training needs to be ongoing, because as the tools are utilized, they can be model drift because of the way they are questioned. So the data actually can change over time. AI tools are very dynamic. The risk is not always stable. So being aware of all of these concerns and then managing them according to your own company policy and then keeping that updated.
Your human edge, to me, is the translation layer. The human edge of AI and where the human factors come in. But AI, let it do its thing. Let it do the pattern recognition. Let it have the speed. But meantime, you have the data that you have in your output where you need the values, you need the concerns, you need at the end of the day what is significant to your board, your C-suite, and what's the culture of the organization. There is that unique balance where you have the two. Leaders today need to not really fight AI, but use it as they orchestrate it to its full outcome and potential for internal and external customers.
Yeah, Noreen?
The only thing I would add really is I often work with organizations or leaders that are going through that journey of implementing their AI projects. And one of the first activities we do is we actually don't jump to the technology, but we do human-centric design workshops. And it's all about, because one of the things AI will do is change the business process and how we interact with tooling today and how we work. And what we learn is we learn a lot of key information. It's not just mapping down the business process and saying, okay, well, which parts can be automated, but also actually keeping the essence of what's important to humans. For a very, very quick example, we often actually process information best when we interact with it. When we, for kids, it's important to quiz, not just kind of have tests and then memorize, but the more they turn it into a song or a game, right? The more interactive it is. The same is true. I don't know about you, but I often still like taking notes. Yes, I type up my notes in OneNote, but I also handwrite notes. And I actually never look at them again, but it is simply how my brain processes it. So if you work in an organization that has parts that actually require your employees to process, be able to then utilize that processing to take other decisions, you're going to want to maintain those parts in a different automated way, or take elements of it that can be made faster, better, productive. For instance, is it important for me to calculate numbers in my head anymore? No, I use a calculator for that, right? So you can find where the efficiencies are, and you can find where there's moments you need to interact and kind of retain. And I think that can go a really long way in keeping the human essence through as we continue towards more automation.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic. Anything you guys want to add? We had a really cool comment, and sometimes the best comments are just, I agree. And we had a really good one that said, I'm a male and I agree, Zara, when you were talking about, there's a lot of bias, right? A lot of female bias in large language models and in AI today. And how do you mitigate against that? Well, you have good policy. Donna and Noreen, you work with C-level executives, right? Can we talk a little bit about allyship? Can we talk about how to make changes in organizations, or whether it's technologies that have bias? Women are still considered a minority, right? It's funny, we're 50% of the population, but we're considered a minority. And then there's, of course, lots of intersectionality there on, different kinds of minorities in that, right? But talk to me about corporate allyship. Talk to me about organizational allyship, or how we navigate technology, Zara, Donna, and Noreen, when you know that these biases exist, and we do have a majority male population here, and very receptive too to this. So I love it. What do you guys think?
I will let you know my experience being an old girl from back in the day. It has been very interesting in how to move and navigate. I've used and coined the term to move through the cracks. I would say at the end of the day, you do need a network. And it was hard to get a network being African American and a woman back in the 70s and 80s. But I did my best. And a lot of times you have to be able to stand, be centered, and have faith. And I believe in moving forward in my faith, being in alignment. But most importantly, having a network not only within the company, but outside the company, because you don't know who knows who. Sometimes it's not important who you know, it's important who knows you. And at the end of the day, I found it most beneficial if you do good work consistently, it never goes bad. And once the work is consistent and you show up with who you are and read the room, pay attention, continue to learn, continue to analyze, then monitor yourself and adjust. I've learned the hard way. I'm a little girl from Brooklyn, New York, who made good. But at the end of the day, as I kept learning, growing, paying attention, reading, always adapting, I was able to start moving between the cracks. When I saw a path, I just kept going. Because if you have a vision and you have a dream and you stay consistent, sooner or later you'll get there.
I really, definitely, I would say amplify everything that Donna has said. And the only thing I'll add to that is, whilst you are looking at, very positively focusing on delivering results, also look at how members of your team, particularly male members and male leaders, can sponsor you along the way. How can they use their influence to actively open doors for you, to perhaps shine a spotlight on you, not just mentor you, but actually sponsor you. And for the ladies to actually put yourself forward for projects that might be challenging, and not to be afraid of doing that, not to fear failure or making mistakes, and keep your focus on delivering results, and not be impacted by the noise around you. There is always noise, and there are always people who will take the negative approach, and that doesn't really have to do just with gender. It can be people from any background, perhaps for whatever reason. But the best way to move ahead is to ignore all the noise. And when you are so delivery focused, and when you are constantly delivering results, you become undeniable. You become irreplaceable, because you are adding value to the organization. So I would say that is the positive way to keep the focus on your, I would say, career trajectory. And the second point I wanted to make is, whilst obviously I would like men to sponsor women, but I wouldn't want us to be in a situation where we go to the other extreme. You have to be quite careful of making sure that we do not encourage positive discrimination. I'm against discrimination of any kind, positive or negative. By positive discrimination, I mean we must not just support a candidate just because they're of a certain gender, just because they're from a certain underrepresented community. We must support people who truly have the merit and are truly competent, because if you support people who are not competent and who do not have the merit, and then they do not deliver, then everybody, let's say that person happens to be a woman, then all women will suffer. So my view is that you have to keep you have to make sure that women still follow a very just path, because that will support other women in the long term.
Mm-hmm. And can I just add one other thing in regards to teams? As Sarah was speaking about teams, it's you can go ahead and always look at what you want to deliver in your results and your outputs and your performance. But you as a leader in global teams, within the company, division, sector, but when you start operating global teams, it's pretty much the same dynamic. You have to be there for the team on occasion too. If they're in trouble, they need assistance, they need coaching, they need counseling, they're going through a divorce. Let me keep it real for you. You're dealing with people that may have been in these jobs 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and now you're going to tell me what to do? I'll do it for you, but they need something in return. And at the end of the day, there needs to be a balance. So remember, you're not always looking at what you can get from them and how you deliver, but you as the individual and the leader need to be balanced and compassionate enough with that tension of courage and compassion and empathy. That's where it shines through for your high performance, because your high performance teams have a certain culture. They're going to follow the leader. If the leader keep an attitude, they always have a chip, they are racist, they crack terrible jokes, they're doing different things, it's unnecessary, or they're not really performing. Even if you're a high-end executive leader in the C-suite, it's those same VIPs and vice presidents that have problems with technology or any changes that are coming through because they got an attitude and they need a mind shift. So let's keep it real at the end of the day. I can get really deep into this and I'm not going to take up that much time, but let's balance out the need of the people for real so you get the performance you want consistently.
Noreen, please.
Yeah, I think the ladies have kind of covered it a lot. I think the only thing I would add about sponsorships and allyship is something I had to learn really earlier, like especially when you come from a South Asian background, sometimes you are afraid of, tooting your own horn or bragging. We think it's bragging when you talk about what you're doing. And a reframe a manager of mine had kind of helped me do in the past is talk about the impact. How did you help people if that makes you feel better? Right? And you're not talking about what you did, because that's not going to be looked at as impact anyways. You don't want to do a laundry list of actions you took, but rather than the impact and help you're providing to people. So because it's easier said than done, where it's not, you can't just go tap somebody and be like, would you like me to be my sponsor? The sponsor needs to see something. So one of the best ways you can do that is showcase your work in the element of teach others what you're learning. Take them along on your journey, help them. Another golden nugget that I got early in career was work yourself out of a job. So don't hog the work, actually share it, get in, own something, learn it, challenge yourself, and then start scaling that. And what do leaders do? They scale impact through others. And it's like you don't have to have people reporting to you, but as soon as you start behaving in a way you're scaling, you're sharing, you're collaborating, voicing your perspectives, someone goes, oh, that's leadership skills. You earn yourself a sponsor.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think, the big through line I'm hearing is good old fashioned hard work. It speaks for itself, right? Like do the work, find your allies, the work will speak for itself. And I think what I love about, you could be a man or a woman, but especially as women, you're just asking for a meritocracy, right? And that's all it is. Now, you do the hard work. You find mentors, you find sponsors, as Zara said. Donna, you keep a human-centric approach to management. You realize everyone's still a human at the end of the day, right? But how does a leader, let's talk a little bit about personal adversity, global uncertainty, right? Things are changing. Every leader faces moments that shake their identity. What, on a human level, and what do you guys do? What have you guys done, maybe in your experience, if you might want to share? What helps leaders regain clarity, transform those very difficult moments, whether it's a layoff, whether your entrepreneurial startup didn't take off, but how do you use those for catalysts for growth?
I think I'll start this time, Zin. And for me, it's sometimes revisiting my personal values. Like if I feel like my compass is kind of spinning around, then I just kind of revisit, like, what is it that's fulfilling for me? What is it that I have gratitude for, especially if something has gone south or not as planned, or I didn't get, and it could be personal or professional, but the lives do blend into each other. So it's really revisiting that. And sometimes it's actually also looking at redefining success. Sometimes you build out these plans. In 5 years, I'm going to be here. In 10 years, I'm going to be here. But you also built that out 5-10 years ago. So don't be afraid to go, wait a second. What are my career goals and aspirations now? Because if I'm not happy about how, the balance is today, or I'm not happy with the way things are happening, how do I change that? And then last one, I think Sarah already said it, is it's really about what are the controllables? What's things you don't know and keeping them out. But you kind of, when you revisit value, redefine your success, and then just kind of look at what are things that I'm thankful for and whatever, that is what grounds me. I'd also say keeping some good sleep and workouts. It's, again, easier said than done, but you really have to put those things to bed going, I can't control this. There's no point staying up all night thinking about it. And that takes hard work too, and practice. It's probably not going to happen the first week, but the more you tell your brain that, eventually it starts believing, okay, you're right, I can't do much about it.
Yeah, it's that mindset, right? Whether it's, you mentioned some great gold nuggets there, Noreen, controlling what you can, and blocking out the rest of the noise, just sleeping, working out, taking that time for yourself. But Donna, Zara, what about you? Personal adversity, professional adversity, what do you guys do?
Well, I had personal and professional adversity happen at the same time. Back in 2001, 17 days after the event, while I was in Washington, D.C., I got laid off, and I was at that point $7.2 billion infrastructure portfolio with Orbit's Priceline, all your global distribution systems, your cruise line systems. I was the project manager for Interline electronic ticketing. So I was all that in a bag of chips, let's say. And after the event took place, I mean, at the end of the day, force majeure is an act of war, and you pretty much have to look at what's happening now and make some decisions. But anyone being anywhere for 22 years, having that type of displacement, you wonder who you are. You wonder, I'm not that person anymore. Or the influence and impact you had with people, maybe getting, special tickets or events and having all the influence that you would need at different times gone because your title's no longer there. You're no longer with that company. So who are you as a person? After putting out 3,000 resumes, then you start looking at your age and your seniority and being overqualified and what's real and what's Memorex. And when you're going through something like that, similar to what's happening to people today, I've seen it on both sides. I think what happens most is you do need to take stock and become who you are. And that's how I always come back to being centered in faith, following your Holy One, making sure you have your values. Because at the end of the day, I needed to recognize I wasn't my job. I wasn't that title. I didn't just arrive. I need to keep moving. You need to be resilient at that point. Otherwise, you will fall back, you will fall behind, and you won't make it. I think the most important thing people need to recognize is you are not the title. You are your skill set. You are your thinking ability. You are your genius. You are everything. So that's how I ended up finally after 2 years and 3,000 resumes with Johnson & Johnson. But they hired me for my performance and what I did business to business. I was high level. I didn't have the science background. I gained the science background. I learned the clinical. I learned the clinical trials. But you do need to keep your eyes on the prize. You do need to be centered. And for me, it's my faith.
I love that.
Thank you.
Zara.
I would, from my personal approach to overcoming challenges, I have 3 things that I kind of look at. You can say it's my own personal resilience strategy. It might not work for other people, but I can share it. The first thing I look at is failure or mistakes of any kind are lessons. They're learning opportunities. So I use it as an opportunity to reflect. What is it that I did that didn't work so well? What could I have done better? Is to really, and you have to be very honest with yourself. And that really can help you grow, both as a leader and as a person. And I believe that when you succeed, success doesn't teach you anything. You don't learn anything from success. You only learn from your failures if you are open to learning. The second thing that I use is to look at the bigger picture. I would say I'm a very purpose-driven individual, and I'm I have a very strong faith in God. So I kind of look at the long-term aspect, whether a certain event or a certain career opportunity or a certain project or a client or company, whatever you did or whatever challenges you faced, how do those challenges align with your purpose? What is it that you are meant to achieve, or what is your purpose in terms of your work? So if you're very clear about your purpose, you actually can, you're very open to challenges because you're not looking at things that in a short-term lens. It's almost as if you know your why, you can almost deal with anything. So I'm very clear about my why. Why am I doing things? So that really helps you become more resilient. And the third is courage. And that's where God comes in, or whomsoever you believe in, whatever your faith or religion is having a belief in a power that is greater than your power. That really gives you courage. It gives you the courage to put yourself forward, to keep going, even though you fall down, even though you make mistakes, even though you're afraid, but you don't give up. I believe you only fail when you give up.
Hey,
and
Zara.
You know what? Oh, go ahead, Donna, please.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to mention say something about what Zara said, which was really important in my transformation. Not until that event took place and I had to move here to Buffalo from D.C., and moving to the Southern Tier and working with Johnson & Johnson in a very undesirable territory, did I learn true diversity. I learned so many things about myself, and that's when my metanoia and my conversion took place in the truest sense, because I continued to grow, and I kept feeling that I was on my purpose and what I was supposed to do with my life. All this happened for a reason. So I had to keep going, as Zara was saying, where you continue because of the resilience and the goal that you have for yourself. And at the end of the day, it is the best thing that's happened, because now today I see everything full purpose. And talking to Nala, I would have never known about Ramadan unless I didn't have a big supporter of Pakistani doctors. A lot of my medical in the southern tier were of the culture of Pakistan. Out in Warsaw, up here in Buffalo, the communities were very supportive. Had I not moved here, I would have never lived rural. I would have never seen anything. I've always lived overseas in Europe, or I've lived in New York City and traveled to the big cities of the United States. So I just want to say a lot of times things happen, and keeping entrenched in faith, and whoever your Holy One is will bring you to the other side.
I just wanted to share this quote by Maya Angelou. It's something that I absolutely love, and maybe it might inspire people. Maya Angelou said, "Courage is the most important quality, because without courage, you can't practice any of the other qualities like honesty, integrity, and excellence."
Yeah, and you know what I love about hearing, the different ways you guys have navigated challenges, again, that through line of do the personal work, and that takes experience, right? Like you said, Zara, you have to fail a few times. Eventually you'll get to know what works for you, right? You find your faith, right? You're not born with a certain faith as robust as it becomes when you do the work, but you have to do the internal work. And that's always really important. We've got a couple more questions and a comment in the chat about where do we see AI massively disrupting existing business models? We can go there, but we've limited on time. Let me also come to another question. And you guys can take either one that you want. But in a world where breakthroughs come from every corner of science, technology, social change, does age or seniority still shape what credible leadership looks like? I talked a little bit about multi-generational workforces, and we all have different communication styles, right? The Gen Z, like death stare, or the way baby boomer might sign off on an email, but we're all working together, and it's actually a beautiful thing. But what keeps a leader relevant across generations in today's workforce in the age of AI?
They're both really great questions. Let me take maybe the AI disruption one. Again, one that I often do with organizations, and the power of AI is taking unstructured data. So there's been data that sits in tables and databases and all of that, and that's great because whether it's your client relationship management data, your resources, your finances, where the power is now coming in and is disruptive is you can take unstructured data. So by what for instance, working with like a grocery retail chain, they have tons of data all over the place about ingredients and nutritional information. And what they want to do, and it's not in pretty tables, it's on like labels of products, if you imagine, right? You can scan and ingest that data, and then you can make sense of it. You can actually combine it to make recipes. You can make readily available nutritional information. You have it aligned to diet plans that actually tells you, taking a picture of your fridge or your plate or a menu that tells you exactly what you can eat in the next meal. Those are just some really simple examples, but what it's telling you is there's a whole bunch of data, just like it's in our heads. And as humans, we interpret and make sense to a purpose. That's what the AI can do with a variety of disparate data sources. That's going to be the most disruptive thing, and it's up to us as humans to determine what disparate data to combine to serve what purpose. So that's the work we have to do.
Yeah, love that. Zara or Donna?
The only thing I'd add to that is I agree with that. And also, I mentioned earlier about the human in the loop, the fact that companies are using AI agents who are autonomously performing tasks without any supervision, and that can potentially cause issues for the company because of errors. So if nobody's supervising that or managing that on a regular basis, then it's a huge risk for the company and can be massively disruptive. And third area is a lot of companies are looking at AI for some of the internal operational administrative tasks, and they've really kind of supercharged those tasks. Example that I can give you is IBM use an Ask HR agentic AI system across the entire company, where anybody can utilize this AI agent and ask questions about the human resources policy, their holiday allowance, their new contract, their pay rises, their promotion, and it really frees up the the HR leadership to then focus on long-term strategic HR tasks, like what's the effective way of growing a team in a particular part of the company. So that's what I've seen internally with business areas like HR, with also IT itself, where they're using AI agents to transform legacy systems as well. So they're easier to kind of bring together with other systems, and you can then have a knowledge base that gives you access to all of the documents and all of the data within the organization, because a lot of companies do not even know what data they have. So before you can actually utilize your data effectively, you need to figure out what data do you have. So these are some of the areas where I've seen massive disruption.
That's fantastic. Donna, did you want to add something?
I think the most important for me, I agree with both, but at the end of the day, with the massive destruction, we're going to need audit and compliance in time. And I think that's an area of development with the governance piece. And those areas will hopefully bring in the control of some of the bias, bring in the values and the ethics. And those are some of the concerns that I have with disruption at this point in time. But the pattern and the frequency of some of the consistencies of disruption with technology, sometimes they are about the same.
Yep. Okay, so we have a couple of comments, questions from the audience, and we also have a really cool rapid fire round that I would love to do, because I feel like those are always fun. Shall we go into the rapid fire? Is that okay with you guys, panelists? Noreen, Donna, Zara? Okay.
Sure.
So, yeah? All right. So we'll just dive right in. One leadership myth you think needs to die in 2025. Go for it.
Leadership does not mean you have to manage people.
It's a good one.
Leadership is about creating good leadership, is about serving people to become leaders.
Love it.
And that leadership thinks that they know it all and don't need to do anything except bring in the technology.
Love it. Humility. It's about the humility. Okay. A habit or ritual you rely on to stay centered during your most stressful times.
Meditation.
Prayer.
Gratitude and workouts.
Love it. All right. One trait you believe will define the most impactful leaders of the future.
Learners.
Servant leadership.
Learners.
Authenticity and adaptability.
Okay, love it. A book, idea, or mentor that fundamentally shifted your leadership lens. Feel free to elaborate on that one a little bit. That's a really good one.
Carol Dweck's growth mindset, if anyone's kind of looked at her work. I do it with my 10-year-old as well. I've been doing it since he's early. And it's all about not being perfect, making mistakes and learning and reflecting, kind of the themes that we've talked about.
Yeah, love it.
I was really inspired recently by Marcus Aurelius, his work on meditations. So from the point of view of Greek philosophy and the Stoic concept of philosophy, which very much focuses on working on yourself, on constantly focusing on doing the right thing and keeping integrity as your core value.
Love that. Donna?
For me, it was one of the key instructors at Berkeley Haas when I really learned blockchain and what could happen in the vision with blockchain and the impact in different sectors.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, last one for the rapid fire, and then if we have time, we can take some of the comments from the audience. One thing leaders should start doing in 2025, and one thing they should stop doing this year.
I would add, in terms of what they should start doing, is more focus on skills-based hiring and upscaling for their teams as well. So that's kind of tandem, because you can't go just hire all the skills you need. So you're going to have to reskill your current teams for what you need. So start investing in them and have them invest in themselves. In terms of stop doing, I'd say randomizing. We don't need to pick up and go do everything. We talked a lot about hard work, but hard work doesn't mean just doing everything. So prioritizing things that will have impact, value, and to who is gonna be great. And so it's really important to stop randomizing and just saying yes to everything.
I would say stop micromanaging, and in terms of hiring, if you hire the right people, you don't need to micromanage them. And I really go by what Warren Buffett says in this area. So his advice was, when he looks at hiring people, he looks for three things: integrity, intelligence, and energy. And if integrity is missing, nothing else matters. So I would say hire for integrity.
I would say going forward, start organizing the organization where everybody has the mindset that's necessary to stay successful in the future with emerging technology. Mindset at all levels of the organization, including your front line. What they need to stop doing is holding on to the past, and this is how we did it, and that's not what we did, and well, we worked so hard on that best practice, and we can't do this, and understanding what's necessary going forward. So to stop holding on to the past and embrace the future.
Okay.
I think from a very small thing that they can start is if they have women in their team, to include them. Just start including them in, decision making and getting their feedback, and really learn from their feedback. And it should be a two-way process. The women should also learn from the men. So I would say start with baby steps.
Yeah, baby steps is great. Donna, Noreen?
Noreen?
I was just saying, I think someone kind of talked about, it was in Cyrus 3 things, like who can challenge you, who can advocate for you, and who can bring you along. So if the men can help do that with the women in their network, and actually, again, it's men and women, but the more you model that behavior, and if you're doing it with other inclusive members of your team, then other men are going to watch you and do that, and it has a multiplier effect.
Donna?
I think men, the best thing they could do at this time is bring the women along, support them, educate them where they can, and also just be open and not feel threatened.
Yeah, open heart, open mind. I like that. It's not just about having an open mind. Have an open heart, bring them along, listen to perspectives. We have one other really interesting comment that I think everyone has either experienced, thought about in some way, shape, or form. And it's about specifically scarcity mindset. And that tends to happen as women, we know this, right? And that's, I think, what the person in the chat is trying to get across, is sometimes as women dealing with other women, there's a scarcity mindset. But I would actually extend that question to, as a leader, right? Why does scarcity mindset not work? And, if you think it works, feel free to push back on that. But why does it work? Why does it not work? What are your thoughts on scarcity mindset?
I don't mind starting. I feel that people who have a scarcity mindset, or they have a very negative view of the world, they don't look at the bigger picture. And when you have that kind of mindset, you don't succeed in the long term. And whatever success that you do achieve, it's not sustainable, because you cannot build success on the backs of other people, by being negative, by harming other people, by exploiting people, by taking advantage of other people, by backstabbing other people, or as they say, when you get to the top, by throwing away the ladder. You don't build a legacy like that. So I would say it's just not something that works in the long term, apart from not being, something that a person of integrity would do, and then you would not build trust. So if you operate from a scarcity mindset and you are very negative in your approach to other people, and you cause harm to other people, or you're deceptive or exploitative, then people will not trust you. You will not build your reputation as a person who is trustworthy and credible and professional.
Yes, it negatively, immediately impacts your networking capacity, right? But Donna, Noreen, your thoughts?
Actually, I'd love to extend quickly and give an anecdote on what Zara said. So a couple of years ago, we were in a management discussion doing performance evaluation for our team members, and there was a young lady. She was an amazing hard worker, individual contributor. And so sometimes you have a halo effect, where if you're amazing, people feel like you're rising on your own. And the one thing that changed and helped our leaders evaluate her as a better team player was they noticed that not only did she perform well, but she often uplifted other team members, nominated them for awards. And that was the difference between leaders seeing her as a good team player, because she was great. Like, what is she supposed to do? Dumb herself down? But that share, which is, again, against the scarcity model, is the difference. That even if you're a high performer, helps you be noticed as now a leader.
Yeah, I love that. Donna, your thoughts?
I think at the end of the day, sharing is much more positive. It's growth, it's impactful, and it gives to the lens of a high-performance team and organization. At this point in my particular life personally, I remove myself from any extractors or anyone negative in that mindset. It doesn't work for me, but I have that choice now, having gone through a career and now coming out of retirement in the emerging trend space for Web3.
No, that's fantastic advice. And, I'm glad we were able to also look at the engagement in the chat from the comments. Zara, Donna, Noreen, thank you so much. I've gotten a lot of gold nuggets from this, and it's been such a pleasure to get to know you guys through this. I will close out the session and say thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Zainab.
Robbie, I can maybe share a recent example as well. We were coordinating a team from a different region flying in to host a couple of clients for an event. And it was my manager, who again was phenomenal in kind of connecting with the regional team flying in, that just assumed that I was going to take care of the logistics and the planning and the catering. And they were like, Noreen, is it set up? And he stepped in really hard to say, I've had a side conversation. I'm not sure why she would do this. And when did she sign up to do this? A small, subtle thing, right? I would have done it anyways gladly. And I do it for many female events, male events, it really doesn't matter. But it was a moment that, like, I didn't even notice it, but he just kind of did it on his own accord.
Thanks for sharing.
One thing that I would add to that, not just giving any example, I don't want to kind of highlight anything specific right now, but generally based on certain things that I've experienced, I would say that if men, particularly from the South Asian community, come across cases where they see there's misogyny, or there is there's bias due to certain cultural barriers or cultural I would say identities given to women within the South Asian community. So if they see that happening, they can look to address it. One of the best ways they can look to address it is by ensuring that they don't do that, kind of being aware that they are always treating women with respect and not looking at them just based on their gender, but looking at them based on their merit, their capabilities, the impact they make. And when they see other men not doing that, they can address it.
Thank you. It's kind of that see something, say something. Don't be a part of the problem.
Just saying, there are a couple of things that I want to mention there. One, I think that it starts with sons. You need to include the son, start early, and so where they start respecting men. The other thing is, like, there are men here. They could have invited their other friends. They could have said, we're joining this group. It's going to be interesting to hear. And I think when they see, you follow leadership, they have role models too. You need to do that. The other thing that I was pointing out, I think yesterday, the important thing is, I mentor young men and young women, and I think somebody was saying, mentor young men, you need to really focus on women. And I said, it's great when women become role models for young men. I think that's also important, that we also go out there and we work with men and we impress, because I heard such incredible stuff this morning. There's so much we can teach, and it's not just women. And I think that level of respect comes naturally then. And again, I would just encourage, I am disappointed sometimes when the men don't show up. And I would love to see our leaders in all of our open communities say, hey, I'm going to be joining that. I'd like to see more men on there. So I know I personally would appreciate seeing more men in some of these women deals. Sometimes I think we shouldn't call them women deals, because we're talking about just general business as well.
Absolutely. One of the key highlights of this afternoon is the fireside chat. And Tariq, off you go. Tariq is the moderator, and Dr. Azra Raza.
Thank you, Naila, and welcome, Dr. Azra Raza. I'm very honored to be having this chat with you. And I just want to piggyback on what Samina was saying. I've been here listening since morning. And this was such a logical conversation, sensible. The problem with men is, and I'm inclusive of that, first of all, we don't listen well. Second, if we listen, we are not listening. And then we don't show up. If men were just here and listen to it, it really all makes sense. But I think somehow it's a manufacturing default that we have. We never open the box and read the instruction. We just try to figure it out things ourselves. And that's why the world is in the way it is. And hopefully this will change. So we are making effort. But now I don't want to take time away from, a speaker who I'm truly honored. I can spend, seriously, without any exaggeration, next 30 minutes introducing her, and I won't be finished. She's an amazing scientist, oncologist, a wonderful teacher. She's a professor as well. An Urdu maven. Her poetry is unbelievable. And then at the end, I would want to talk about a little bit about Mamdani connection that she has. The Mamdani aunt that we would talk about. But Dr. Azra Raza, thank you so much. I know how busy you are, and you always find time for open. So we're very honored to have you. And I want to, my goal in this conversation is that I speak for 10% and you speak for 90%. So I want to be a good listener. Instead of me giving your background, why don't you share your amazing, wonderful, gratifying 40 years journey, professional journey, with us, with all these things that you have played so many different roles throughout and given back to the community. So let's hear it from you.
Adabers, everybody, and thank you very much, Tariq and Naila and all the Open team. I'm so honored to be here. And more importantly, I've been listening all morning to some incredible speakers that you've had. Obviously, everything that Saira Madad says and does and stands for, she's suis generis. She's a whole new discipline by herself, and I'm one of her biggest admirers. But I was also very affected by the conversation that Zainab conducted so beautifully. And before I give my introduction, I want to just say what impressed me about Zara. For example, she said, be clear on your why. That'll give you purpose, and that's going to give you resilience. Thank you, Zara. That was a beautiful thing you said. Donna, big fan already. Thank you so much. And your focus on building the inner life and having that strength, that spiritual connection, that gives you the courage to transform yourself, which you were able to do in such a seamless fashion. I must say, I'm going to go and stalk you on all the social media I can to find out more about you. I'm so impressed. Thank you for sharing that. And of course, Noreen, thank you, Noreen. Many things you said have affected me, but one thing that stuck out to me was, you said you take notes and you may not look at them ever again, but just the fact that you went through the exercise of taking notes, it makes you remember things. And I think that's a beautiful message to give, because all of it is about power of concentration. So instead of giving my introduction and talking about how wonderful I've been, which I have not, I'm just kidding, I think it was so much more important for me to give the message that I learned from all these young women that you brought on this forum today, Tariq. Thank you so much for allowing me to have this opportunity. Just a couple of words about myself is, as Tariq said, I'm an oncologist who sees 30 to 40 patients a week. I have a very busy research lab at Columbia University. I've always been into research, half-time at least, in addition to teaching, of course. Thirdly, I am a founder of 4 companies now, and I hope I'll have a chance to talk about that in a few minutes. And I think one of the most important, of course, is that I'm an author. I have written the book, The First Cell, and the Human Costs of Pursuing Can Last. But I would say that the most poignant thing about my own entanglement with cancer is that I'm also a cancer widow. And that gives you a different perspective about the disease itself. One last thing I want to mention here is, we talked a lot about the role of women in today's leadership positions, etc. I want to share a personal experience with you. which is that after my husband died, he was the head of the cancer center at the university where we were in Chicago. I decided to move closer to family because I was sort of all alone in the Midwest with a little child. So I started to explore possibilities in the Northeast. And I settled on UMass because University of Massachusetts gave me a great position and endowed professorship, etc. I went there. But as my daughter became a teenager, I realized I wanted to move to a bigger city. And I started looking into New York. And at this time, I got an offer from the same people who had offered me a position when I was leaving Chicago. Except they doubled everything. They doubled my salary, they doubled the resources they were giving me to continue my lab research, etc. I was so shocked, and for working 4 days instead of 5, because throughout my daughter's high school, I worked 4 days a week simply because she needed my attention more. I was so shocked, Tariq. I called them and I said, why didn't you give me this offer when I was moving initially from Chicago? That I had to first go to Massachusetts, spend several years there and come. You know what he said? He said, well, Azra, you and Harvey, my husband, were such a team that we didn't know if you would survive without him. But now that you went to Massachusetts and proved that you could develop a national and internationally credible program, of course we want you. Oh my God, this is the glass ceiling that women have to be fighting against. I had no idea that all the work I had done all these years was being basically assigned, the credit was given to my late husband. He was very smart. He was head of the cancer center, but he had a different program in cancer. I had a different program. Yet, this is how I was looked at. So this is a glass ceiling we talk about. I didn't even know that it existed until I struck my head against it. You know what I told him? My only answer was, would you ask Harvey the same question? Of course not. So I wanted to let the women know that don't become complacent about this. It happens to all the time. You just don't know it.
Thank you so much. This is really so touching and so real that this happens every day. Women have to prove twice or more than a man does. I was sitting down with my son and daughter and we were talking about it, and my daughter said that I would have to plan to be a mother while my son, her brother, can be a father and next day go to work like nothing happened, which is very, very sad, and they lose competitive advantage. So you're an oncologist, and usually it takes us about 4 weeks to 4 months to get an appointment. We have access to you right away, and I want to fully leverage. Tell us what increases and decreases the risk of getting cancer.
It's a good question to ask, Tariq, because it will lead us into what we can do about it. And obviously, there are some factors that are unchangeable and some factors that are modifiable. You can do something about them. And one of the unchangeable factors are like family history of cancer. You can't do anything about it. Or let's say you are born with a genetic mutation that makes you more susceptible to get cancer, things like that. But then, of course, there are alterable factors that increase your risk of cancer, and those are like smoking. If you're not having a healthy diet, you have obesity, which is uncontrolled, you're not exercising enough. All those lifestyle measures matter. And equally important, I tell my patients this, Tariq, that look, you know that junk food is bad for you. You know what's the junk food for the brain? It is negative thinking. So I think having positive thinking, having relationships outside with your family, with your community is so important also for having a good lifestyle. I just want to warn everybody that one of the horrible stigmas about cancer is once it's diagnosed, the patient can tend to blame themselves and say, I must have done something wrong that I got cancer. And that should not be. We should not be blaming the victim. Because while all the things I said could reduce the risk of having cancer or postpone it, for example, if you had a genetic susceptibility and you also smoked and you had a bad lifestyle and you were overweight and everything else, then you would get cancer at 20 years of age. But if you had a good, healthy lifestyle, despite having that genetic predisposition, you wouldn't get cancer till you're 70. And still, despite all of that, I want to say that nobody who has cancer should blame themselves for it, because you could lead the most pristine lifestyle and still get cancer, because it can be a completely random mutation that arises as a result of cell division or something. I think those are the risk factors that I just wanted to mention. And remember, the mental health, something that Donna said so brilliantly about how much you need that inner strength, not just to face life, but also to face challenges like a diagnosis of cancer.
Wonderful. Prevention is always better than cure. Now let's talk about technology. We are being advanced in so many things. Is technology helping us in early detection of cancer or prevention? What's your view on that?
Well, listen, technology is the key always. Science is the key. That's why I'm totally a scientist at heart and in my practice, and since I started to think. And the idea is that integration of technology across disciplines, reaching out to work with people who have expertise in completely different areas and bringing everyone together and assembling a dream team, that is the way to take care of genuinely hard problems. And technology can definitely is the heart and soul of it. And I just want to share with you what where I am with this. And what I'm going to show you is what I think is the future cure for cancer. And what I'm holding up is a syringe and a needle. And the cure is not in the syringe, guys. The cure is in the needle. What is in the needle is that biomedical and bioelectronics engineers at Columbia University, Sam Sia and Ken Shepard, took a common coronary stent. You know, this tube-like stent that's put into coronaries that millions of people are walking around with. Well, they took this stent and they simply fabricated electronics into it in such a way that now this stent can be inserted into an arm vein instead of into the coronary artery. And because of the electronics on it, this stent can detect the appearance of any abnormally large cell, which is a cancer cell that appears. Blood should not have such large cells as the size of a cancer cell. And when it appears, it can not only be detected, it can be electrocuted on the spot. In other words, detect the first cell and kill it immediately, zap it out of existence. So prevention is better than cure. This thing, we named it, the engineers have named it Stentinel, a stent and a sentinel together. I call it a smoke detector and a fire extinguisher in one. But the point I'm making is twofold. One, this represents $50 million in grants and 10 years of work, which was the result of a team built to look at early cancer, the first cell. I reached out to biomedical and bioelectronics engineers. So we are oncologists, cell biologists, molecular biologists, multi-omics experts, AI experts, biomedical and bioelectronic engineers, all came together to develop this. Because yes, they know a lot about bioelectronics, but they don't know what to detect. Well, that's where we come in. So it's the integration of technologies that was important in doing this. And the second is that it is also my lifelong dream to go and eliminate the first cell rather than chase after the last cell.
Very good. Wonderful. I wish we can continue on this. This is so important. But I do want to pick on one more point, which I heard from you, I believe, last year or a year before. you were speaking at Open Silicon Valley, and you told us that you have collected sample tissues from thousands of your patients, which is a very valuable thing. What do you plan to do with this, and how would that really change how we look at the cancer today?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that question. And first of all, I presented this whole thing, concept of it a year ago. We weren't ready then, but now I have made a company around the Sentinel and Open, which is a forum for entrepreneurs. I am appealing to all of you. Help me and help those of us who are trying to change the healthcare paradigm from treatment towards maintaining wellness and preventing disease. I have such a lonely battle here. We go to medical school with the idea of treating illness. So doctors are like the worst in this. They don't want to think prevention. They don't want to think early detection. They want to only treat. And the way we have developed treatment for cancer is absolutely brutal. It belongs in the caves to stone ages. This slash, poison, burn. In this day and age of such sophisticated, high-level technology, how dare we give 22-year-olds horrible chemotherapies that are going to develop affect their development and further affect their whole future. So I feel very strongly about this. Now, I began my career by studying and treating acute leukemia in this country. And Tariq very soon realized that in my lifetime, this deadly disease is not going to be cured. So what is the only good news we can give to cancer patients? We found it early. Well, then I should find leukemia early, I said to myself. But how do you find leukemia early? Because by the time you diagnose a patient, cells are all over the body because it's a blood cancer. So I decided that the only way to find leukemia early is to find people who are at high risk of getting this leukemia and then following them. And there was a whole group of people who are called pre-leukemia. And so I started to study and treat pre-leukemia, which is called myelodysplastic syndromes or MDS. And in 1984, these are the two decisions I made. One, if I'm going to cure human cancer, I'm going to study human samples, not mice or rats or pigs. And number two, I don't want to go and treat cancer, I want to prevent it. The best cure is prevention. And so with those two things in mind, I start to study pre-leukemia and start to bank samples of bone marrow, blood, saliva, serum, plasma, biopsies, everything I could get. Since 1984 to today, just this week, I had a clinic where I did multiple bone marrows in my clinic with my own hands, going to the tissue repository. And today we have over 63,000 samples longitudinally obtained as patients went through the natural history of their diseases from pre-leukemia to leukemia. I didn't rush in to waste the samples because I've been waiting for technology to catch up. Well, now we can do multi-omics and we can analyze petabytes of data that will be generated by doing genomics, proteomics, transcriptomics, metabolomics, all these things on serial samples to trace the first cell and try to get to the bottom of it. This tissue repository, I feel, is a real national treasure, and we need to respect it because, do you know, not one single cell is donated by another oncologist. I have taken care of every single one of those patients, and every little vial in these multiple freezers I have has a poignant story for me because I took care of that patient myself. And it's a sacred duty that we put people through pain to get those biopsies. We need to pay back by developing better treatments for them.
Thank you so much. And I know that we have to have a separate session with you on this because I'm so intrigued with the information. But quickly in 30 seconds, if I could ask you last question on cancer, and then we'll move on to closing, is there are a lot of young women in this audience, and they are hitting Peloton every single day. They think they're living a good life. They don't have to worry about it. What advice do you have for them, both young women and men as well?
Well, listen, I have a daughter, and when she was like 6 or 7 years old, I decided to join something called a mother-daughter series. Why? Because that series exposed young girls to potential role models. Far be it from a young girl to ever think that her mother is a role model. I knew that very well from the beginning. So I wanted to expose my daughter Scheherazade to real role models. And during this series, well, if you paid enough, you could also have tea with the role models. So we met some most incredible women. And one of the women we met, Scheherazade and I, when she was only 6, I think, was Maya Angelou. And we got to spend quite a bit of time with her and have tea with her. And what a woman. I had just read her book, I Know How the Caged Bird Sings, and I'm a huge Maya Angelou fan, love her poetry, love her writing, and got to spend time with her. And Scheherazade had practiced a question with her father, and she asked Maya Angelou. And I remembered this suddenly because Zara mentioned Maya Angelou. My daughter Scheherazade, little girl, goes up to her and says, Miss Angelou, if you could give me some advice, what would it be for my future? And this is a 7-year-old girl asking. Miss Angelou was so amazing. She basically went down on her knees, held the little hands of Scheherazade, and she said, baby, people will forget what you say to them. People will even forget what you do to them. But they'll never forget how you made them feel. And this was so moving and so dramatic.
So powerful.
Scheherazade has this etched on her brain. And this is what I want to leave young women with. It's not my advice, it's Maya Angelou's advice.
So I have another question, follow up on that. For last 20 or plus years, you have been advising a young man in New York because you're very close to the family. And that man is a global brand. His name is Zoran Mamdani. You have seen him grow up. You're very close to him. So let's talk about your connection. Briefly, we have last 4 or 5 minutes and I want to get some poetry out of you as well. The audience, this is really an audience magnet right now. And I know how close you are to the family and Zoran. So please share with us.
Well, I don't think it would be fair for me to say anything in public that, of course, I share deeply with the family and him. But I do have a YouTube video where I basically, when he was standing for assemblyman, I was the first person to do a launch from my living room, and that YouTube video is available. So I encourage everybody to see it. I'd like to say one thing about Zoran, which I also say in my introduction of him, when he was only 28 years old. And if you go back and see this video, guys, you'll see that he has been saying the same thing about affordability, etc., now that he was saying at 28 years of age. But his parents had named him Buddha when he was like 9 years old because of the goodness in this boy. There is so much goodness of heart. And I give stories about him in this video. I don't want to repeat them here because I think we have little time, and Zoran is mashallah all over the place. Wo to chha gaya hai puri duniya pe, and more power to him. Our job is now to help him succeed, and I think that he's on his way brilliantly, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to show my strongest support for him.
We all pray for his success, and I know you have a lot of fingerprints on his upbringing. ये बुरे दिन और किस्मत की बुराई तौबा, सजदा करता हूँ तो काबा भी सरक जाता है.
अरे वाह.
अगर उर्दू की नस्ताली ज़बान तो मेरे पास नहीं है, मगर 2-1 मिनट अगर आपसे कुछ इस पे बात हो जाए, क्योंकि आप इतनी माशाल्लाह से इतनी अच्छी तरह पोएट्री को डिफाइन करती हैं. आपका वर्क, आपकी YouTube वीडियोस तो है, उन्होंने तबाही मचाई हुई है. I know the oncologist goes in the background and the entrepreneur goes in the background, but कुछ हमारे साथ प्लीज शेयर कीजिए.
Well, look, I think poetry and science are completely intertwined like two strands of the DNA, like the two lines of a ghazal's sher, completely together. Because they present to you, in a way, the poet and the scientist, the highest form of seeing. And you ask questions in both disciplines, poetry and science, that no one else has thought of or asked before, and try to find newer answers. Also, poetry makes scientists more human. One of the biggest challenges I have is how to tell patients bad news. And I'd like to recite just Emily Dickinson, whose advice is the best, which I always follow. Tell all the truth. She admonishes you right in the opener that you have to tell the truth. You can't give false hope. You can't hold anything back. Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Success in circuit lies, too bright for our infirm delight. The truth's superb surprise. Like lightning to the children, eased with explanations kind, the truth must dazzle gradually, or every man be blind.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Well,
and I'd like to read one sher in Urdu also.
जरूर, उसी की मैं request करने वाला था आपसे to the end. Yeah.
There's nothing like Urdu poetry, guys, and actually I'll read two shares. One is that Ghalib, of course, has addressed every question possible that comes into my mind. And in relation to medicine, here's what he said. Ibn Maryam hua kare koi. Yes, it's true that Jesus had the resurrect somebody who's dead, Lazarus. He resurrected and gave life back. But Ghalib is not impressed by that. Why? Because he says, Ibn Maryam hua kare koi, are mere dukh ki dawa kare koi. What is that dukh? You can. So I was speaking at Napa in Karachi a couple of years ago, and the late Arfa Sayyida Zehra, the brilliant Urdu scholar, etc., was in the audience. And when I read this sher, she provided the right meaning. She said, you know, Azra, this is Ghalib's protestation to God, saying, what kind of a prophet did you send us who has the prescription for raising the dead but cannot tell us how to live the life? Ibn Maryam hua kare koi, mere dukh ki dawa kare koi. And the last sher I want to read is by Mustafa Zaidi. Dil ke rishte ajeeb rishte hain. See, he could have used any word here. He uses ajeeb because ajab, ajaib, that's like a magical thing, you know, with it, wonder. Ajeeb. Dil ke rishte ajeeb rishte hain, saans lene se toot jate. You have to protect relationships. They are so fragile. You need to protect them. Not even deep breathing, just breathing can break those relationships. But saans lena, breathing here can also mean just passing of time, aging. And if you don't turn around and nourish any of your relationships and let too much time go by without tending to them, they will break. This is the message I want you to think about. Dil ke rishte ajeeb rishte hain, saans lene se toot jate hain. And this is exactly what Maya Angelou told little Scheherazade so many years ago.
Thank you so much, Dr. Azra Raza. You have been wonderful for our audience, and personally for me. I always benefit from your presence. I now request Naila to take it from here, and thank you again for being such a strong ally for Open as well.
Thank you so much, Tariq.
It's constantly active by definition. It is not performative and not occasional. It's intentional, consistent effort that changes outcomes. It means using our influence to create access, build pathways, and ensure women are not only present, but meaningfully included. It means uplifting women whose voices have historically been overlooked, women from South Asian communities, newcomer women, Black and Indigenous women, women from underrepresented cultures, women who took non-traditional career routes. Allyship is speaking about a woman's capability when key decisions are being shaped. It's ensuring her talent is not missed because of bias, silence, or assumption. It also means challenging habits, paying attention to whose contributions are acknowledged, noticing when someone is overlooked, and choosing to step in. These everyday choices influence careers more than we realize. And you know what? It's also good for business. When it comes to financial planning and insurance in Canada and the US, women are more commonly the decision makers. So it makes sense to have representation at the decision-making table. I do a lot of reading. I like reading about business biographies. When you go to the bookstore, there's a lot of books about business successes, and usually there's some secret formula for success, usually not replicatable. There are far fewer books about business failures. I actually like to read those books. That's where I get insights into what pitfalls to avoid. And one common thread of those companies that failed was a lack of diversity and diverse thinking at the decision-making table. Too much groupthink, a lack of openness to new ideas. Research shows that companies with diverse leadership teams are 35% more likely to outperform their competitors. Allyship is not measured by what we say. It's measured by the leaders we help lift, the opportunities we create, and the women who advance because we choose to act. I try to live this every day. 50% of my leadership team is made of women, and 50% of my team are visible minorities. It is so obvious that it results in better and more robust discussions, broader thinking, and more optimal decisions. When I look back to my own career and the success that I've enjoyed, and the results that I've driven, and the position I'm in today, for me, this has been one of the secret ingredients to that success. And so for me, it's important that this approach pervades the entire organization. Now, we've made a lot of progress. These discussions have gained more visibility over the years, but I can tell you, I still see resistance and ignorance around this. I feel like I'm still fighting battles every day. For me, that makes me even more resolute to continue to be an ally, and that's why I'm here today. And when Nyla asked me to speak, I jumped at the opportunity. Well, let me leave it there and pass it back to you, Nyla.
Thank you so much. So
I have to say, as the chair of the board of Open Houston, we see this as a very important issue, and we're delighted to be able to participate in this. Also, personally, I'm the co-chair of the Houston chapter of Golden Seeds, and Golden Seeds is one of the earliest organizations and one of the most active organizations helping early stage women entrepreneurs. And we've talked about some stats, and God bless if you looked at some of the stats, how women get funding compared to men. Despite their capabilities, it's appalling, and there's a lot of work to be done. My background, I was born in Karachi. I was 6 years old. My father got a position in New York, so New York is where I grew up. I grew up with a mother who said that every woman should be financially independent, and in the 70s, my mother said to me, hey, you need to start looking into this computer programming. It looks like an interesting thing. Computer science was really growing, starting as an opportunity. She said, look at it and see if you do well. And I did it. I loved it, and I was good at it. And thank God for that. I progressed up. I moved up the ranks of IT IT organizations. And then something wonderful happened in the 80s where some males on top recognized me, and they decided to move me into, this is when I was with Houston Natural Gas, which later became Enron, and they went ahead and moved me into operations, where I became an executive and the highest woman in the company for quite a while. And after that, I was actually very much, often, sadly, the only woman in the room, or one of the few executive women in the room in the energy companies that I was involved in. Then I had to pivot like many others. I call myself an unlikely entrepreneur. And that came about with the fact that my brilliant nephew said to me that you keep complaining about the problems in the industry. How about if we do something and we solve the problem? And the problem that we were talking about was the fact that in those days, and there's still issues now, but it was just awful data. It was late data, it was bad data, gaps in data, silos of data, and that was causing significant problems, in terms of lost revenues and costs associated with finding out problems later. So as audacious as our goal was, we set about doing that. It was kind of crazy because we had some very large players who were also trying to tackle that problem. So we went ahead and built our company, Merrick, and it didn't happen overnight, but we were successful in what we set out to do. We had some rough years, but also grew year over year, and ended up building the company out both organically and through acquisitions over a number of years, as well as domestically, internationally. We were in 5 countries outside of the US with subsidiaries, and had a successful exit in 2014. And at that time, I'm proud to say that the company was recognized as a leader in oil and gas production software. And it was also, we had significant market penetration. We were actually, if you looked at the wells in the US, which is a lot of wells in the US, a third of the wells were using one or more of our products. And the last thing I want to say about that, I'm still proud that the company, we built a sustainable company that is still very successful and doing very well right now under new leadership. So that's my background. I talked a little bit about my mother, that she encouraged me to work with. Interesting now, I want to talk about my mother, but she never worked for a living. She basically went to college, but her father died, and then she ended up marrying my father, raising 5 children, building across the world, and she came in the 50s and without any supports. And we all kind of turned out okay, so that was good. But she would have been a great businesswoman, I believe, if she had been given the opportunity. What she did do was pretty amazing. At the time of the partition, after the partition, she became an officer in the Women's Naval Reserve, and she was very active in APWA, which was the All Pakistan Women's Association. And then in New York, when my dad was with the UN, and in Houston, she was very, very active in doing volunteer work, and primarily to help women is what I saw her do. And she was a good role model for me in that respect. But she was also very supportive of her daughter. So I just to share a little bit, I remember when I first learned to drive, and I was about ready to get my first car, and I remember what my mom said to me, and she said, "Shabash, Midi," and that translates, for those of you who don't know, it's kind of like "good job" or "bravo, my daughter." And when I went and got my first job, she was so excited, and she said, "Shabash." And then when I decided to quit a fantastic, executive position and start a company, again I heard "Shabash." So I have to say that my mother and her belief in me, her confidence in me, was so instrumental to my own level of achievements. And I think what I want to say is that I think that is so critical to our success. And if we don't have it, we have to look for it. We need to find it through, whether it's friends, colleagues, allies, organizations like this, where you come to this, because succeeding in business or starting a company, by God, it's hard. It's extraordinarily hard, and it's challenging enough without facing the criticism and the and the doubts, and most importantly, I would say the most difficult thing is the dismissiveness that women sometimes often feel, unfortunately. Not being seen, not being heard can be extraordinarily damaging to ego and to self-image. And I'll tell you, I've been there and I've experienced it. So I do think that what I heard this morning, learning about how to overcome obstacles, learning tricks, trades, little things, even though you can't apply them, exactly the way it is, it makes you start thinking that there are ways to get around all of this stuff. So I think these types of meetings and like we had today, it was very, very important. I think that has to be one of the missions. I think learning Open Global, doing this so that we can actually kind of learn across, or industries, learn across generations, learn across ethnicities, various experiences, is, again, it just offers you an opportunity to think and work through issues. So I hope that we continue to do that. The other, important thing I think is, we talked about is role models, right? And by gosh, I just became a girl fan of a whole bunch of women that I just heard talk earlier. It was like amazing. I'm going to follow them. But think about the importance of role models. For my mother, I think my mother's role model was Begum Rana Liaquat Ali Khan. And I look back at that woman and I see what she did. In the 30s, she was already well educated, teaching university economics. Then she married our first lady. She married our first prime minister. And then after the partition, she did so much really for women in regards to helping them lift them economically and in the social roles of women in Pakistan at that time. And she built out the women's, I think it was the National Guard. She built out the Women's Naval Reserve that my mother was part of, APWA. She started. And then after her husband was assassinated, if you recall the history, she went on then to become representative at the UN. Then she went on to become an ambassador to the Netherlands, Tunisia, Italy. Then she joined again the next government and helped in economics. And then after that, she was, I think it was the 70s, she was elected the first woman governor of in Pakistan of the province of Sindh. You think about what she did. Like today, if somebody did that, whether it's a man or woman, you go like, wow, But she did that back in the 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever, and in India and Pakistan. And I think that it is so amazing. I think back on that, and I see her as a role model as much as my mother saw her as a role model, because there's no way in the world, my own achievements kind of, are pale by comparison. But you look at that, and while you can't do all of that, I have to say that, she inspires me to do much more, even at my age, to do much more. And that to me is the power of role models. And I think it is important. Naila and I talked earlier, and it's just my tooting your horn or seeing women. I think it is important to see women and hear women, both for men and women, to see these brilliant women like we saw this morning. And there were so many role models that we saw this morning, because it does inspire you so much. So I'm going to go ahead and just say, I think that the other thing that with role models is you kind of wonder what, the other thing is you think like, what would they do, if they were here today? And I think of Begum Liaquat Ali Khan, and I would say, you guys are on the right track. You're doing what you need to do. Continue this work, grow this work that you're leading after. And if my mother was here today, I think you all kind of know what she would say. And I think she would say, shabash. And she'd say shabash not just to me, but she'd say it to everybody here in the work and effort that we're doing. So on that note, I would say good job, everybody. It was such a pleasure to be here. And I look forward to more meetings like this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Naila. And I won't take more than 60 seconds. I just want to thank you for your leadership. And every person who has spoken today, I want to thank you. We all have a job. I don't know if this would change in my lifetime, but I want my next generations to know that their parent, their grandparent played a role in making a change for gender equity. We don't have to change anyone. If we change ourselves, I think we can bring the change. I just once again want to thank all of you. You had better things to do on Saturday afternoon, but just showing up here, being on the table, really shows that you care. And Open Global is playing an important role. Please support us, join us. But once again, thank you, Naila, for all these things that you have done in the last so many weeks. You have been working tirelessly, and the entire leadership. I don't want to name because I'm going to forget some folks, so I don't want to do that. But everyone who's on the screen and present here, just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you so much.